This episode of the Love and Watches podcast is brought to you by the Swiss Watch Company. You can find more info about the Swiss Watch Company and their new line of watches at www.swcusa.com. That's www.swcusa.com. Thank you and enjoy the show. Love and Watches is a podcast for male and female watch lovers alike. Perpetual Girl and Ranch Racer are a watch-crazy wife and husband team bringing you the latest in news, gossip, controversy, and anything else that matters in the world of watches. We hope you enjoy the show.
Hey, Watch fam. Welcome to another edition of the Love and Watches podcast. This is Ranch Racer.
And this is Perpetual Girl.
You guys have made it to episode 29. And this is an exciting episode for us. We are going to present to you an interview that we recently did with a small watch brand. But before we get into that, we're just going to jump right into wrist checks, and then we'll segue into the interview. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Perpetual Girl for her wrist check for the day.
All right. Today, I'm wearing my Frederique Constant Slimline Moon Phase. And this is one of my favorites. It's for what you get in a watch, this is a price performer as far as quality. And it's an in-house movement made by Frederique Constant. It's the manufacturer,
Yep.
RE.
Yep.
It's got an exhibition case back, moon phase.
It's a really pretty watch.
Very clean looking dial. Everything's balanced nicely. It's got a date wheel on the left and the moon phases on the right. And it looks nice on a black band. It looks nice on I have a Milanese band that I stole off another watch, and it looks really fantastic and just a overall classy. But it's got a pretty good size to it. It's almost 40 millimeters.
Mm-hmm.
So,
but it's got those classic sloping sides, so the case back is smaller than the case front, right? So it's almost like a cupcake, a teacup or a cupcake. Yeah,
it really could be worn for a man or a woman, and most of the pictures are shown on men.
Mm-hmm.
There's variations of this, and they released newer ones this year as well. But this was purchased in January, I believe it's the 2018.
Yeah, you got that when we were in Vegas in January. Yeah,
really impressed with it because that was I think we talked about it on the other episode where I had looked at the Explorer and the Panerai, and the folks that were taking care of us seemed kind of bothered with us, so we left.
Yeah,
so we ended up
where we got treated the best that you actually ended up spending money.
Yeah, and I had not thought of this brand before, but it's really everything I've seen in their lines are beautiful. So
yep, no, that's a great brand.
I learned something. I learned a lot. It's very pretty.
That's our first Frederique Constant. So cool watch. Love that bracelet too. It's really
this
pretty.
is actually I swiped this off the Alexander Vanacci.
It looks good on that.
Really high quality, quick release Milanese band, thick.
Because that came with a leather strap, right?
Correct, with a deployant clip on it.
Yeah,
a really nice one actually.
This looks really good with that Milanese though. It looks really good.
It's a little bit more casual than the black.
Yes.
And if I were to splash it, I won't get it wet. So it's fun to change them around.
Yeah. Cool.
Really nice. How about you? What have you got?
Well, today I'm wearing a watch by a small startup brand. Well, not really a startup brand. We'll explain that. This it was a Kickstarter watch, and it's by a company called Swiss Watch Company. Which is a little bit interesting because I guess these days you can't use the word Swiss if you're going to have trademarks in Switzerland. This is a Swiss made, it meets the definition of a Swiss made watch, has a Swiss movement. It's got a Salida movement in it. But this is the brand's inaugural offering, doing their own watch. And it's a big, beefy 44 millimeter diver.
Mm-hmm. And it's called Diver.
It's called the Swiss Watch Company or the Swiss Diver. Really, really, really nice watch. The quality is very impressive.
There's some serious weight to that watch.
There is some serious weight. Like I said, it's a big, hefty diver. I mean, there is nothing meek about this thing. It is if you're a fan of the larger, like the Omega 600, Seamaster 600, or the Rolex, what is it, the Deep Sea? I think it's the Deep Sea that's their big hefty diver. But if you're fans of those types of watches, you will like this watch. It's very cool.
It does have a lot of beauty to it as well.
It does.
That kind of balances out that strength.
Yeah.
It's got a beautiful dial that looks almost. This happens to be the white one, and it looks opalescent. And the bezel insert is a matte black ceramic
with concentric rings
with
engraved
design.
in it. Yeah, it's really cool.
And the contrast of the dial there's a lot of really neat contrasts in this watch with textures and colors, and they've filled in negative space with patterns. And we'll talk a little bit about that later.
Yeah, and it's got a solid case back with some really beautiful wavy line engravings on it. The dial has got some very interesting touches to it in terms of the lines and how they've done the lines on the dial to make it stand out as opposed to just being a flat, plain white dial.
The lume is amazing.
Incredible lume. 20 coats of lume on this thing. I mean, they really, there was a lot of attention paid to the small details when they designed and built this watch.
Isn't 3 coats the norm?
3 to 5 coats
3 to 5?
is pretty much the standard these days. So they did 20. I mean, it's very labor intensive to do that. So like I said, it's got a Swiss Sellita SW200 and retails for $450, which for a Swiss-made, Swiss-powered diver is pretty amazing. So yeah, that's my wrist check, and why it is, why it's important for today's episode is that's who we interviewed. We interviewed Stephen and Josh Romer, who are the owners of the brand. Stephen is the designer, has a long history in the Swiss watch industry, and his son Josh handles the marketing for the company. So if you see these guys on Instagram or Facebook or anywhere out there, that's Josh. That's who you're talking to. So we were really excited to interview him because we met them in January when we were out there. I think we mentioned that on a previous podcast. We got to
talk to them for a while.
Yeah, and they're super, super nice folks with a lot of experience with Steve's experience, tons of knowledge. And just really impressed with the brand. You know, they've done a really nice job, a lot of talent, and the quality it's a step above a lot of micro brands that we've seen. So that's what this show is today. We got to interview them, and I think we spent about 45 minutes interviewing them over Skype, and just a lot of fun. And I actually get to see them next week because I'm going to Vegas for my sales conference. So hopefully I'll be able to
jealous.
Hook up with the two of them for a beer. But yeah, so I don't think there's any news or anything that we need to cover. Nothing of any note. So I think let's just jump right into the interview. Should we do that?
Sounds great.
All right, cool. So without further ado, here is the interview with the Swiss Watch Company. So we're here today. We're super excited to be here with Steve and Josh Romer from Swiss Watch Company. Guys, welcome to the show.
Good to be here.
Yeah.
Appreciate your time.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. I was hoping we could do this live. It just didn't quite work out with timing. I'm going to be out there for business next week, but Skype is almost as good. And we did have a chance to sit down with you guys in January when we were out there and actually meet you face to face and see the watches prior to them shipping. So we are very excited to have you on the show. For our listeners who have not heard of Swiss Watch Company, Steve, why don't you give us just a little background on the brand? I know you have a very rich history in the Swiss watch industry prior to coming over here to the United States, and I know there's an interesting story around actually having the word Swiss in your brand. So for our listeners that maybe aren't familiar with you guys, how about just a little bit of background on the brand?
Sure. Well, it all started, I believe it was 1995 when we moved as a family to the States, and we're looking for a name that would resonate with people, and I just threw that name around, and we checked with the Swiss trademark office, and they said, "Oh, you're not allowed to use that name in any of your official trademarked." And so all of a sudden, I said, "Well, I'll submit it anyway." And lo and behold, for about 18 months, there was a window where Switzerland approved the use and then the name Swiss in any trademark product. And we submitted that, and it was approved. And as soon as it was approved, they locked that window down, and nobody else is allowed to use that word now in any trademark. So Swiss is, I guess we're an anomaly in this regard here. Nobody else has that name in their trademark, the official wording with the Swiss trademark. And it took off with that. We used that name. We worked for the for U.S. Marine Corps. We basically did most of their watches for about 15 years under that, and it worked fine. And we thought, well, this is our business until some people came in and said, well, you're not allowed to do this anymore. So we had to find other ways of working. And so anyway, this is where the name Swiss Watch Company came from. The only company that didn't appreciate us using Swiss Watch Company was International Watch Company. Yeah, they were somewhat jealous because they were well, we were international, IWC, and we were SWC, and we said, well, that's what we're going to be, and we just left it at that. So.
Oh, how interesting. Well, in all fairness, you came from Switzerland. IWC was started by an American, if I remember correctly, right?
Correct, yeah. Yeah.
So that seems to make sense to me. So you guys have been around for a while, actually, and that's the interesting part of this because, we, as watch enthusiasts, we see watches popping up on, Kickstarter and Indiegogo constantly, right? I mean, there's so many folks that have jumped in, some of them very seriously, like you guys, others just looking to jump in, do one off-the-shelf watch really quickly and jump out.
Well, and they all look the same.
Well, yeah, because they're all off-the-shelf parts and stuff. But the interesting thing with you guys is Swiss Watch Company has actually been around for many years. This may be your first watch as a brand. But Steve, your background is actually really quite involved with the Swiss industry, right? With Swatch and some of the stuff that you've done.
Correct. Yes. Give you a little life history here. I started. I finished with school in grade school, 1980. So from 80 to 84. I worked at Swatch as it was ETA at that time. That company still exists, ETA. They make all the movements for the Swatch group. I worked there for 4 years. I did my mechanical engineering there. And after that, I continued working for him for a total of 10 more years, of which 7 years were overseas. This is not necessarily a secret that a lot of the components are manufactured overseas or assembled overseas. So I worked in Bangkok, Thailand for 7 years, where I did production management for movement assemblies and parts manufacturing, as well as quality assurance for basically all of the components and products that came out of that area. The Swatch Group, they purchase a lot of cases, dials, and for various name brands out of that area. And the top brands are specifically, they enjoy there's 4 or 5 companies that have high standards in quality achievement, and that's I worked there for about 7 years doing all of that. And yes, after that, we moved to the States, and there's nothing else for me to do. I always was in love with watches because I grew up in Kiel, which is kind of the watch capital of the world, with headquarters of the Swatch Group. Rolex does all of the movement manufacturing there, and I don't know how many brands are headquartered in that area between the French Jura area, Biel, going into Grenchen. So yeah, I was the first one in my family to get into that, and loved it ever since. My first watch that I had was a Rado Diastar.
Oh, cool. That's a very cool piece.
I don't have that one anymore. My second watch that I purchased was an Eterna. I forget the name of it. It was their first scratch-proof, fully scratch-proof watch that Rado couldn't control anymore after they lost their copyright for scratch-proof cases.
Oh, interesting.
So that was my second watch, and after that, while working for the Swatch Group overseas, I had a bunch of Omegas, Longines, Tissot, I had Mido, I had Certinas, I had I don't know how many swatches that I had. I think I was, because I worked in the assembly there, the final assembly, I think I had about 200 of them that were
Oh my God.
not grade A quality. Back then, you just, well, this watch doesn't work, so off it went. And now the security, I'm sure, well, soon after I left, the security went up so high that nobody was even enticed to think that they could walk away with one of them.
Right, off the assembly line.
That was a big no-no. But when I was there, it was like, okay.
Yeah, as kids, we thought that a lot of the Swatch watches were toys because they were all decorated with Olympic themes and cool bands, and so we didn't quite realize what was actually there.
Well, and that was the whole idea behind Swatch originally, right? I mean, it was an affordable Swiss watch. I mean, that was huge back when it first came out.
I had one.
Yeah, I mean, we all did, right? As kids,
skeleton.
we all had swatches for sure.
In the late 80s.
Yeah.
That was the heyday of Swatch, when we could never ever make enough of them, and it was I think I left the company when we did about 25 or 30 million of them per year, and that still couldn't reach the demand that was out there. So it was phenomenal working within that time frame within the Swatch Group.
Yeah, I'm sure. Well, they've made a comeback. It seems like. Yeah. I mean, like they've got stores, especially like in Vegas. You walk through New York. There's a big Swatch store in there, and Disney World or Disneyland. They've definitely made kind of a comeback. It seems like.
Yes. They with the new mechanical movement that they introduced, I think was it somewhere around 10 years ago. That was a huge comeback that they started with that movement.
Yeah.
My college roommate had the wall clock in our dormitory room.
Hey,
the large wall clock.
Never fell asleep with that thing. It was so loud.
It was really loud, but boy, it was cool.
Yeah, I remember those. Yeah, they were quite different, that's for sure.
Yeah. So, all right, so Swatch is now behind you, and you start picking up kind of your own thing, right, and doing stuff for other brands independently.
Correct. Yeah, we first started with the armed forces, with the Marine Corps, and then we kept on armed forces with Army, with the Air Force. Firefighters, we did that. We worked a little bit for police as well, and it kept the business going for about 15 years, quite well.
Can you tell us a little bit about what makes those pieces unique? Like, is it strictly logos, or is it materials based on their jobs, their tasks that they're doing?
Well, it was the original watches that were made for Marine Corps as well for all of the armed forces were strictly just cheap logo watches. And we had the idea, well, we put the logo on and we had to get approval from the armed forces to put the logo on there. But we made them as durable as we could. And, we were at least 60 or 70% more expensive than all of the other watches. But, if you work 20 years for the armed forces and you get something that looks cheap and is cheap as a parting gift,
I see. Yes.
People were not that appreciative about it. So we started with that, and immediately it was like, wow, this is the kind of gift we wanted. And so it took off quite well in that regard. So we provided watches to the armed forces where before it was mineral crystal. It was inexpensive Miyota movements that they used, cheap bracelets that they used. The hair got caught on them, and they were just people were frustrated with them. And as soon as they saw our watches, the scratch-proof crystal and high-grade stainless steel, Swiss-made movements, they were like, well, tell us when you can send us product, and we will. So it was really good. It was really good.
That is cool. Josh, so you grow up with a dad that's totally into the watch industry in a big way. Was that always a trajectory for you? Or, I mean, you handle all the social media aspects for the brand and the communications and marketing. Was this something that was always on the radar, or were you like, I don't want anything to do with watches? What was your perspective?
Yeah, it actually wasn't. I never had, and still don't really have the patience to work on watches. So I actually went to school for business administration, went to college, graduated, and then decided that. So my dad, up until we released. We went with our Kickstarter campaign. He was just manufacturing for other brands. And while that keeps the business afloat, it's the brands that you manufacture for that are making the real product and making the money. And with my dad's background and talents, I knew that he had what it took to create watches that would be sustainable for a brand on his own. It was just the marketing and getting out there, because things have changed so much now where it's all digital. And that was something that I understood and I knew I could do, and it was something I had a lot of passion for. So we kind of both have our strengths and stick to them. And I love watches and the craftsmanship, but as far as the inner workings and the design and all that's all my dad. He's really the heart of the company. I just spread the word. That's kind of what I do. My brother, my next younger brother, he actually lives in Switzerland, and he graduated from watchmaking school. Was it a year ago?
It was this year.
This year. So
last year.
Around this time last year.
Yep.
And he actually deals a lot with assembly, and he's going to start working with us on our watches. And then I have another brother that lives over there that he's going into the same thing. He's going to be dealing with a lot of features on our watch too, the brushing and all of that. So we kind of each have our own focus and just complement off each other. And it's great being able to work with family. And even though it was never really in my mind growing up, I couldn't be happier with where I am now.
Wow, that's so cool. That is really neat to be able to do it as a family. And I didn't realize that your two brothers were over there that were going to start taking part in this business as well. That is really cool. Very cool.
Yeah, it's kind of funny, everybody has their own strength, and I don't know what Josh is doing. I just know, there's just like, okay, do what it takes. Okay?
Do what you do.
I have no idea. I'm coming from the the old retail model of if you don't sell it in a jewelry store, you cannot sell a watch. And boy, this is not the case anymore nowadays.
Things are
sure
very
not.
different.
Yeah, I mean, with the micro brand and industry and with obviously the internet and social media, it's a very, very different world.
And it happened overnight.
It really did. Yeah.
Like we're around 50, and we just can't believe how things have changed so quickly.
Yeah, it's quite phenomenal, the whole thing here. So I'm appreciative of what he knows and like, okay, it's good. So yeah, we're because of that now we will launch a second product, a third product after that, and a fourth model family overall. So we hope with 4 model families that we become a full brand, because right now, you know, with one model family as a diver's watch, you're still in the infancy of that. So the second and then the third and the fourth will complement each other, and we want to build up, not that we have specific separate ones, but that there's a line that we go with, that we build upon, that we can say, okay, this is part of our name brand, and we will incorporate those into all of the model families that we have.
So I have a little question about that, actually. Yeah. Are there any thoughts of producing something a little bit smaller, not a small ladies' watch, but something for a smaller wrist, or the ladies who like a larger dive watch, something that's, you know, around 38 to 40 millimeters? Okay.
Want to go with that, Josh?
Yeah. So our sports watch, the next watch we're going to be releasing, it's kind of the design's kind of along the lines of like a sporty diver, and it's going to be a 41, and which is a little above that range. But we also have a dress watch in the works that we're still in the deciding stage of what size that's going to be. Because we want to cover all our bases, like you said. And when it comes to sizes, there's a lot of ceilings in sizes. A lot of people won't go above a 41. A lot of people won't go above a 40. So we want to make sure that we can have an appeal to all parts of the market, so no one misses out just based on the size we have.
Right.
Well, and obviously we love to hear that, because that's really kind of was the genesis of our podcast. And so I really like to hear that you guys are working to make it a very inclusive brand in terms of the sizes and the styles. So before we get on, I do want to talk a little bit about some of those future products, but I mean, I think we'd be remiss if we didn't really focus on your first offering, because, you know, one thing that we've talked about here on the podcast, we've been going for about 1.5 years now, was, do we want to bring brands onto the podcast? How do you, as kind of we're supposed to be third party, impartial media outlets, right? But we did want to start incorporating some brands into our podcast, but for us, it was really important to make sure that those were brands that we truly believed in, not just someone who wanted to pay us some money to advertise and come on the podcast. And, you know, the one reason why I really wanted Steve to go through his background is that you guys really have a huge amount of industry knowledge. And again, going back to the whole Kickstarter thing, where, you know, it's pretty easy to go to Hong Kong with a bag of money and say, okay, make a watch for me. And you do that once, and then you're gone, and, you know, the people that have purchased your watch have no post-sale support, and you just kind of disappear and go on to something new. You guys have really focused on the quality, and just little things like, and I remember asking you this when we met with you in January about the lume on your watch. I mean, you guys went nuts, let's just be honest, with the number of layers, right? You got 20 layers of lume, 20. Which is absolutely incredible. And that's something that for us, for PG and I, we want to be able to put a watch on at night, charge it up, and in the morning I can still read the time, and I can do that with your watch. So it's just little things like that. So kind of talk us through your design process, your philosophy, Okay. Yeah.
Well, if you look at the loom thickness, it was mainly governed by how many layers you can put on there, and the average layer for the longest time was about 3, and then they went up to 5 and so on. I was never happy with that, because ever since the loom is not radioactive anymore, because originally those isotopes, they were radioactive back in the 70s, 80s, and that loom, that glowed back then.
Yep.
So it was applying enough loom, so it's not just enough, but when you first use it, that you're like, you have somewhat of a wow factor right there, because it glows so strong. And that's what we want to achieve. And it took working together with dial manufacturers. It took about almost 2 years to get to the point. Okay, we're happy now. I mean, it's still a complicated process that is challenging, but we are where we can say, okay, this is good. And every time I go to the Far East, and these are compliments that I get from dial manufacturers even, that I go and visit, because you can do this with a couple dial manufacturers, and they have the patience to build that up. They're like, wow, why does your watch glow so much? And that's in the middle of the day. Okay, that's when we walk up a staircase where there is not that much illumination, where they immediately see that the watch is glowing, and it's quite amazing getting those compliments from those manufacturers that deal in this industry. So we know because of that. I mean, we were on the track there and achieved something that basically is a home run in that regard. And we want to. This is going to be something that we will incorporate in all of the watches that we have that kind of a loom in it that can say, okay, this is the minimum that we will accept in all our watches.
Yeah, that's
beautiful.
Awesome.
I'm looking at the photos as we speak.
Yeah, you guys have some really good loom photos on the website that we're gonna point our listeners to. Now, in the world of dive watches, it is, again, if you look at a lot of the micro brands, we talk about Submariner homages, but I think, especially if you're building or manufacturing your watch along the lines of meeting, like in the US, the ISO standard for dive watches, it's a pretty small box in terms of design. So I know it can be very difficult to set your product kind of apart from all the rest. And you guys, I think, have really successfully done that with some of your design elements, specifically
the angles,
the way the treatment that you did on the ceramic bezel insert with the concentric circles. And then I think the one that stands out the most, which when I first saw your watch in pictures, I wasn't so sure about it. And then when I actually got to see it in the metal and put it on the wrist, I absolutely love it. And that's your rather unique box element
Square.
in the center of the dial. Talk a little bit about where did that come from? How did it come about? Is that just to set you apart? Was there something else that kind of contributed to that design aspect of the watch? Where did that come from?
I don't even know that much anymore how it came about. Most watches had lines going all the way through if they had lines, and that you either had them horizontal or you had them vertical. I was like, yeah, it's nice to have lines, but we'll separate those lines into a sense where it fills up the center of the watch and doesn't take away from the index area. And we tried it out, and we're like, yeah, it's different than other name brands, so we'll stick with it.
Yeah, I have a background in art from many years ago from college, and I like the box too because it fills in your negative space without being too overpowering. It just gives it that much texture so that you're not seeing a lot of the dial. But the dial itself is so pretty. It almost, the white one, I'm looking at it in my hand, and it has almost an opal feel to it. It's got a lot of silvery shine to the white. It's really beautiful. So I think the contrast of the box to the actual smooth dial is perfect, and it fills in that negative space in a really nice way.
Yeah. Appreciate that. Thanks.
Sure.
Now, you may or may not be able to give us an answer to this, but is that going to become a design trait of the brand? Are we going to see that throughout the different lines, or is that really just limited to this first offering in the diver?
No, even the second, the sports watch that we have will have lines in there, but it won't just be lines. It's going to be some additions to just lines that we have. So we hope it's going to work, and we hope it's going to look good. We are working on the finalization of getting the samples all finished, hopefully by the end of next month, and then Joshua's going to do his miracle there.
And will that be another? Is that going to be another offering through Kickstarter? How are you guys going to move forward as you do release more of these collections?
Yeah, we're going to do that one, the sports watch through Kickstarter. One day, I think we will pull away from that. And Kickstarter's it's a really cool thing in the sense that it's become a pretty robust market. And it's a good way for new brands to get out in front of people because one of the things that sets micro brands apart from these other brands that they market like micro brands, but they are like Spinnaker and Aviate, is the budget just isn't there for us to market like they would. So Kickstarter is a pretty cool way to be able to do that, to get in front of people. The negative thing is, and you mentioned this earlier, is the barrier to entry for a one-off model is almost non-existent now. People can go buy a watch, take some pictures, and throw it up on Kickstarter, and that's somewhat tarnishing the reputation of watches on Kickstarter. So I think the most important thing for us to do, and for any brand starting out in this market, is to focus on providing not just one model, but multiple models that cover more of the market, because that's really what's going to help build the trust with the community. Because there's so many brands out there that you can put out one model and then they'll disappear, like you said, or even two. And I really, really respect what the other micro brands have done in the space. Notice, Ocean Crawler, all those guys have just done a fantastic job of proving that they're here to stay. And I think that's the most important thing for us to do at this point. So we will be going with Kickstarter on the sports watch. We'll probably go with that route again with the third model, just because as far as marketing goes, we're pretty limited. We're just on social media, and that's about it. Most people still don't even know we exist. So that'll help us quite a bit, but we would like to get to the point where we can move into pre-sale just directly through our channels. But we'll see how Kickstarter goes. It's changing so much, even from when we were on the platform last October running our campaign. It's changed so much. So only time will tell if that's going to continue to be a viable resource.
You know, Kickstarter and other types of platforms like that, even if you look at things like Patreon, right? I mean, they're very much a double-edged sword, because you do get a lot of the junk, right, that has to be weeded through, but it's allowed. I mean, let's face it, the micro brand industry probably wouldn't exist, at least the way it does today, without these platforms, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, it allows guys like you who really want to offer a high-quality Swiss-made watch, or non-Swiss-made, whatever, but a high-quality watch, normally mechanical. It's a great way to do that. It's just you have to fight, that all the junk that's on there too, and you got to be able to set your brand apart. So they're definitely a double-edged sword.
Yeah, absolutely. We would not be where we were without Kickstarter. It's been an amazing resource for us, and it is kind of, you get the pros and the cons. There's a lot of people I've heard from that they won't buy a brand's first model, and I honestly don't blame them, because a lot of people get burned with that first model. So we're really thankful that we had Kickstarter to use, and you do get a little bit of the guilty by association by being on there and launching your first model, but that's something that's a pretty easy fix as we go forward and release more.
Yeah, and for our listeners, if you haven't checked out, Swiss Watch Company, definitely do that. We'll include links to the guy's website in the show notes. But one thing I would encourage everyone to do is go look at the Kickstarter campaign and go in and look at the comments, because you guys have a ton of really, really positive comments in terms of quality, the customer service. So, and just me personally looking at the watch, I mean, comparing it to some of my other watches, you guys have really knocked it out of the park in terms of quality and execution with this thing. So I think, you're a perfect example of why you wouldn't want to avoid buying the first offering from a company. You guys have just really approached it sensibly and done a good job. So
thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, we really appreciate that.
Okay, now Perpetual Girl was just pointing something out to me, and we got to bring this up. So, Steve, you have a long history with Swatch. They wouldn't sell you movements, huh? You guys went with the Sellita movement in this thing.
Correct, yeah. Well, Swatch will sell quartz movements without any preconceived notion that to name brands. However, the mechanical movements, they will only sell to established brands that they sold movements to for a long time already. And there's, I think by the end of this year now, it's going to be final that Swatch is closing its door to any possibility to sell movements to anybody else. So the market is here. Okay, who do you use for your mechanical movements? Quartz movements is not an issue. So on the mechanical movement side, there's, of course, Sellita is the front runner, because they have basically the same movement as ETA has in the 2824. And if you go up the model line of Sellita, basically they copy one-to-one those old, well-established movements. And so there of course are an outlet, and then there's two or three other smaller companies that provide movements as well that could be used for that. So yeah, it's that's what you're dealing with. Either you buy your Swatch Group movement by risk on the gray market, or you stick with a Sellita or those 2-3 other smaller name brands that provide those mechanical movements.
Yeah, and we've talked about this, excuse me, quite a bit on the podcast, and what's going on with the off the shelf movement market, and especially with ETA, because we know that those have been getting cut back more and more every year. And obviously, I was tongue in cheek with my comment, but Sellita has really made a name for itself. I mean, they make super high quality, good movements. They pretty much fit into the same movement holders as the ETAs do, so they're easy to incorporate into new designs. So we were very pleased to see that. There's other, you guys have the Swiss background, but a lot of micro brands have gone with like Miyota and some of those types of manufacturers.
Yes.
But
yes, yeah. But we don't have that luxury. Well, I don't know if it's a luxury. I'm very proud of just using Swiss-made movements. We are not allowed to use any Miyota movements because of our name. I mean, we have to follow Swiss-made law, which has become quite a bit more strict now, where you have to have at least 60% of the content of the watch head has to be Swiss-made, and we follow that very, very strictly. that we conform to that law. And a Miyota movement or a Seika movement is and never will be an option for us.
Well, I don't think you're going to get any complaints from your customers, especially at your amazing price point. I mean, to be able to pick up a beautiful sapphire crystal ceramic bezel diver with a Swiss Salida movement for $450 US. I mean, that's amazing. I mean, you guys have, I think, nailed it in terms of what you're offering with the piece and the price point. To me, you can't beat it.
Yeah, price-wise, we want to be in that area just so we can state that we're having a watch for the public and not just for, we're not in the $1,000 to $5,000 range, and there's not much of a difference in quality. I mean, a lot of that money that you pay there is marketing.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, it's marketing, and the larger brands have the ability to ask more money just because of their name, right? We all know how the game is played, so which is why we all love the microbrand market so much. I mean,
we do, and it's bringing new collectors in where they didn't think they could afford something of this quality.
Well, yeah, 10 years ago, you weren't going to buy a dive watch with a Swiss movement in it for $450. I mean, it just wasn't. It was unheard of, and that's why the microbrand market and guys like you have really opened this watch collecting hobby. I mean, it's kind of exploded over the last few years, and I think most of that is due to the microbrand market and less to do with kind of the older entrenched brands who, frankly, I think from our perspective, have struggled to move into this new world, right, of social media and buying online and all that stuff.
Well, and there's more talent that's able to do what they want to do in producing a watch instead of having to know someone who's in the know. So it's actually become more, it's fair. It's fair so that anybody can use their talent.
Yep.
Yes. You're right.
So guys, one of the things that our listeners ask us a lot, and frankly, I don't know why they ask us because I have no clue, but what is the process for starting a microbrand? You guys had background, so you already had a company established, but you still had to go through a lot of the same processes that most of the microbrands do in terms of finding manufacturers and how to do the design work. What can you tell us? Can you give our listeners a little idea of what, from A to B, what it takes to get a microbrand off the ground?
Without showing it your cards,
right?
Without giving away any secrets.
Well, from a manufacturing point of view, we somewhat have an advantage that I know who does what, and I know in which quality level they work from a case manufacturing. Basically, all of the cases in this price range, well, not basically, all of the cases are done in the Far East. It's not a possibility to have a case manufactured in Switzerland because on a high-end quality level, a Swiss-made case is about 300% of the cost what a Far East high-quality case would cost, and that even gets multiplied with sapphire crystal and then with hands. With hands, it's about 1,000%. So we know who the manufacturers are because I've been dealing with them for over 30 years now, and we have somewhat of an advantage over other micro brands in that regard, where we don't have to do that experience. So, well, is this match going to work? Is this going to work? Is this going to be okay? We already know that. And I think the biggest challenge that micro brands have is to meet the minimum production quantities required, which, because of that, they tend to go lower in quality, because the high-end manufacturing brands, they at least require 500 to 1,000 units being made, and that's somewhat of a risk. That's why so many are coming and going.
Yeah.
So yeah, we kind of have an advantage over other companies in that regard. But it's necessary to do that, to design, to go through the sampling process to make sure everything is gonna hold and it's gonna work, and it's gonna be comfortable to wear. And there's always something that can be improved, that needs to be improved.
Yeah, the one thing we have learned over the years is that the brands, the micro brands that are finding success, are the ones that are taking the time to go overseas if they're based here, visit their manufacturers, make sure that the process is managed kind of every step of the way. And we know, Steve, you travel a ton, and that's a big part of, I think, why you guys.
Yeah, that is a must. I mean, if we go about 8 times a year to the Far East, it's if you don't do it, you're gonna fail.
Yeah. He just landed from Switzerland this last Wednesday, so he's gone.
Yep. No, we wanted to use this. We knew we had this window available where we could get you guys both in the same room, so this is why we jumped on it. We know Steve will probably be back on a plane heading somewhere overseas again here soon, so we appreciate taking the time. But so, all right, so you've got your first offering out. Looks like it's been quite a success with your customers. Let's talk a little bit about what we can expect next, what the timing is for some of these next offerings.
Mm-hmm. So we're hoping to have for the sports watch sampling and everything ready to run a campaign in November. If we don't make that window, we may wait until early next year to launch it. But right now the plan is to launch it this year. We're going to have, within the sports watch model family, we're going to have 2 different variations. One with an automatic movement with SW200, and we're going to do a no date, and we're going to see how that's received, because if you do a date window, people want a no date, and if you do a no date, people want a date window. So yeah. we're going to see how that goes. I'm sure we'll get some people not liking that they'll have the phantom date window underneath, but it's something we've seen other brands be successful with, and the SW200 is a really good movement that we're comfortable with using. And for the other variation, we're going to do a quartz model, and the watch is still going to be Swiss made, so it's not too often you see a micro brand doing a Swiss made quartz, because it's pretty difficult to keep the value there, because quartz movements aren't very expensive. And that's going to have a sub dial with a second time zone that you can time in. So we'll have something. The one with the automatic movement is going to be around the same price range as our current diver, and the quartz is going to be quite a bit lower. So we'll have an option for people who this is. I mean, as affordable as ours is, it's still a decent amount of money. Sure. So we want an option there for people that it's a little lower, but they still want to experience a nice Swiss-made watch.
Very cool. Yeah, we're going to be watching closely. We're very excited to see these next couple of offerings. So.
And that's a lot about what our podcast is about, is collecting at all budgets, because we've got some people who have very high-end watches that follow us, and then we've got some who they just got their first automatic with a Seiko movement, and they're just thrilled. And $200 was a real stretch for them. So yes, we want everybody to feel like they can be a part of it.
Yeah. And we're releasing a chronograph soon as well. The reason we don't promote that as much is because we're only going to have, due to the movement restrictions you mentioned earlier, it's going to have an ETA 7753, and we're only going to be able to make 50 units with 2 colorways, so 25 each, and that's just not a whole lot of watches. We wish we could do more, but we're having to work with what we have, and that is going to be in the higher price range. It'll be above $1,000, so higher than our customers are used to, but it's something we're really excited about as well. Give people who want a little bit of a higher caliber watch, but like the design of our current diver, it'll give them an option there.
And what would the case size be on that one? I forgot.
It'll
I
be
think
the
you mentioned.
same. It'll be the same as our current diver,
The
just
diver. Okay.
thicker.
Okay, got it.
Gotcha.
Yep.
And then how are you coming to market with that one? Will that also be a Kickstarter, or is that going to be direct through you guys?
We're going to do a pre-sale with that one direct through our site since the quantities are so low. With the Kickstarter, a lot of people don't realize, but Kickstarter takes a pretty good chunk, and it's well earned of your profits. So we're going to run a pre-sale direct through our site and then release it with the low quantities we have. We're not too worried about it being an issue. Because it's not like other models where my dad mentioned before. A lot of people have reached out to me as well on how to start a new brand, and people are always surprised by the minimum order quantities. So you need a pretty decent investment ready to go if you're going to start a watch model. So that's so we're not going to be running the chronograph through Kickstarter. We're just going to do a pre-sale directly through our site for the limited units we have.
Gotcha. Yeah, and obviously since that is less units, it costs more to manufacture. So
yeah,
that makes sense.
Well, and that's a pretty special piece of Swiss-made chronographs. So when you think about higher end, like an Omega Speedmaster, you
think about what you're paying for a
Correct.
high-end Swiss chronograph versus even if it's going to be above 1,000. I mean, it's still
not
you're
6,000.
still looking at something that's pretty affordable. So
The nice thing is that movement that we're using is the exact same movement that Omega is using for their Speedmaster. So we're quite excited about that part, that we can have that amount of movements that they were made by ETA, the 7753. It's
the coaxial.
It's a guarded movement. It's a Valjoux movement that they use for the chronograph. Of course, theirs is a certified chronograph, and ours isn't. But it's the same. It's the same base movement that they're using for that.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. Sorry, were you gonna say something?
So yeah, we're looking forward to that, and we hope that there's plenty of people that will digest those watches within a short time frame that we have. We'll see.
Yeah, that's exciting. That's exciting. Cool. Well, guys, we're coming up on, I don't know, probably about 45 minutes. Is there anything else you would like our listeners to know about the brand, or future plans, or anything else you guys would like to mention?
We will be attending the LA Microlux show in Chicago. For anyone in that area that wants to come out and meet us, really we want to meet and get to know as many people as we can. So for any people who are following us on Instagram or social media, feel free to reach out to us. We love talking with the community and getting to know everyone. It's really a unique community in the sense that it's just a nice community to be a part of. There's not really any competition going on. You don't have people you have the outliers, but everyone just accepts everyone. So the more people we meet within the community, the happier we are. So I don't want anyone to ever be hesitant to reach out or talk to us. It's our favorite part of what we do.
And what were the dates of that show again?
The 18th and the 19th of October.
Okay. And then are there... So that's actually a really good point, because there are starting to be more shows or more opportunities for customers to actually get their hands on microbrand watches before they buy, right? So there's another website out there that does their own show. Do you guys have more plans to do more of those in the future?
We're looking at the Time Bum is running a show in DC the week before the Microlux show in Chicago, and we're looking at that one. It's all going to come up to scheduling and whether my dad's going to be in the country or not. But we'd like to attend as many as we can. And you're right, they're starting to be shows specifically geared towards microbrands, because I think that's one of the biggest challenges a microbrand faces when it comes to notoriety is getting to know people, getting to know the community, because really that's the main thing aside from quality that sets them apart from these manufacturer-created brands that just go out and try to sell a ton of pieces. It's the people behind it. So I'm really excited that those opportunities are starting to pop up more and they're getting more established. So we're going to be attending and getting to know as many people as possible.
Very cool. Well, and it's not just the notoriety and people getting to know you guys. That's important, but also just being able to see and touch the watch, right? I mean, that's been the piece that's been missing for so many years, and now there's more of these opportunities cropping up, and I think that's great. I
wish we could do something, have a show in Sacramento.
Well, we were contacted by a gentleman who was looking at putting a microbrand show together here in California. So I don't know where the status of that show is right now, but they're more and more of these opportunities are starting to pop up, and it's nothing but great news for the consumer who wants to get more into watches and especially into microbrands. So.
There's a lot of younger millennials in Silicon Valley the industry is moving a lot of their companies up here towards our foothills to expand and have lower cost of production or whatever. And a lot of these folks are really into watches, so it's kind of a neat market that's not really tapped into, I don't think.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it's a really cool thing. And like you said, a lot of people have that 3 to 5 second rule on the wrist that they have to feel magic there before they're going to make a purchase. So yeah, if you guys hear of one that pops up in your neck of the woods, let us know.
Or Reno.
Do it. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll definitely do that. We'll keep you in the loop on anything we hear. Well, so I know we probably need to cut this. I'm sure you guys have a lot of work to do, but I would be remiss if I didn't mention we were able to connect on another level. Our listeners are very familiar with our situation here on our ranch and our ducks and geese and birds and everything. And we thought it was pretty fun when we met with you in January and learned that you guys have turkeys and chickens and all that kind of stuff. So that was pretty fun.
Yeah, that is. Yeah, that's Joshua's doing, and I'm just excited he does it.
I love it. A lot of people call me crazy. It kind of happened. I got chickens by chance, and for those in the community know that's the gateway drug.
Yes, chickens are the gateway.
So next thing you know, I have turkeys, ducks, soon geese, and it's just a really fun thing that I enjoy. And I have my in-laws gave me an egg apron as a joke for Christmas. So
those are great. I don't even have one of those. I'm jealous.
Yeah. It's kind of what I've become known for within the family. But you can't knock it until you try it.
Exactly. Well, guys, again, I really appreciate you being on the show. This was a lot of fun for us. And like I said, I'll be out in Vegas next week. So if we can make it happen, beer's on me.
That would be great.
Yeah. And let us know.
Cool.
I wish I was going. I have to maintain order.
You got to take care of all the birds.
Yeah. That's the one downside is you're kind of chained to home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It can be tough.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, gents, thanks a bunch.
Thank you so much.
We appreciate it.
Thanks so much for your time.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
We appreciate you having us.
It's great.
Cool. And that was our interview with Steve and Josh. That was a lot of fun, wasn't that? I mean,
yes.
I really enjoy talking to those guys. They're very down to earth, lots of knowledge, and
super talented, beautiful watch.
Yeah, and really fun to hear about Steve's background. I mean, that guy's done a lot in the industry. He's been around it for many years.
It's not his first rodeo, that's for sure.
It's not his first rodeo, and Josh is such a cool guy. I mean, he's a lot of fun.
Hey,
and
they have chickens and ducks.
I know it's always fun to talk to them about that.
They're okay in my book.
In January, chatting about that, and he had some questions for us about the geese and stuff. So that was fun. But yeah, so
back to business.
Yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed that, and look for a review. Probably it should be this week. It should hit the website this week. So we'll do a post on Instagram to point you to that. But there will be a review of their Swiss diver. And now to the really exciting part. This is something we've been waiting for several weeks. We're giving this watch away. So this is our giveaway watch, kind of our return to the air and
I'm assuming
and
I
just
can't.
revamping the show.
I'm assuming I can't enter.
No, you can't. You're not eligible.
Oh.
Neither are your family members. So,
Or pets.
or your pets. Your pets are not eligible. You can't enter. The geese can't enter. But yeah, so we're giving this watch away. Again, this is a $450 value. If you go to their website, that's what you're going to pay, $450.
And the quality far out, it surpasses the price.
It is a beautiful watch. Again, this is a big watch, so if you have a small wrist, you might struggle a little bit with this one.
This is unfortunately not a lady's watch, unless you're okay with the lug sticking completely way out over your wrist.
It's a monster, yeah.
I've seen some ladies wear their watches that way. If they enjoy it, that's totally cool.
Yeah.
But just a heads up, this is a really big watch for the ladies.
It's a big one. But you had asked them if they were going to have smaller sizes, and that was I'd love to hear that. So
they're definitely kicking that around, and you'll hear you will have heard that in the interview.
Yeah, so I think they're looking at a 41 millimeter and then the dress watch. So there's more,
possibly
really
a 40. Which 40 for a diver is easy. Like a Seiko Monster is what?
Well, Monster I thought was 43 or 44.
It's lower than 44, I think.
And you wear a Monster, but it looks big on you. This is a little bit more bulky. Like I said, this is more like a Seamaster 600 or the I want to call it the Sea Dweller, but I always forget what Rolex's ultra deep watches. I think it's the Sea Dweller. Anyway, it's a big watch, but in any case, I think whoever wins this thing is really going to enjoy it. We haven't 100% figured out the giveaway yet. There will be a couple components to it. As we've promised, though, in past shows, this is not going to be limited to Instagram. If you're not on Instagram, don't worry about it. You're still going to have the ability to enter to win this watch. Instagram followers will probably have a few other opportunities, maybe to get some more entries, but we really felt that we didn't want to limit it just to Instagram. So you're measuring 42. So your old Monster is 42.
The orange Monster's 42, but you can get away with it. And I think as much as I love their steel bracelet, I think the design of the lugs, you could put a Perlon or a NATO, and I think the ladies could pull this off. Because I know a lot of the ladies have some large watches. Yeah, you could definitely pull that off with this. Even a rubber, like white rubber.
So you're 6 and 3/8 basically is your wrist size. You're kind of right between 6 1/4 and 6 1/2. And it does hang over the edges a little bit on you.
Not as much as the Submariner.
No, I know. That's really interesting. And the Sub is a 40, or is it Sub's a 40 or 42? 40. So anyway, like I said, we'll be giving this watch away, and we're very excited.
So pretty.
We're going to be, we'll be posting some information about it on the website as well as on Instagram. And for those not on Instagram, stay tuned. You'll either read about it on the website or possibly in our podcast next week. We'll have all the details worked out on how you can enter. So
it still has stickers on it.
Yeah. Oh yeah, this is a brand new watch. This is not a. Yeah, Josh sent me a brand new watch to review, and we just discussed it, and we said, hey, this sounds like a great opportunity.
And it has not been in the swimming pool. It hasn't been worn out of the home or away from the ranch.
It's been photographed, and that's about it.
Yep.
So, yeah, really, really neat watch, and it's going to be a great opportunity for someone to own a very nicely made Swiss diver. So, I think that's it. Should we close with that? The exciting giveaway from the Swiss Watch Company and Love and Watches.
So we'll get the info out there as soon as we figure out how many hashtags we want to incorporate into it, which probably won't be many.
Don't worry, you're only going to have to tag 35 people and use about 100 hashtags, so it won't be that hard. Don't worry. No, seriously, it's going to be pretty simple to enter. So. And hopefully it'll allow us to build up the followers a little bit on Instagram, which we've been trying to do. We've tried a sponsored post, and we're going to see how that goes, and just trying to get the name out there a little bit more.
Well, like you said, we do have some followers who aren't on Instagram because of sensitive things they do at work. So we want to also reach out to those people who aren't on social media, and there's quite a few. So we want to make that available to them, because that's a whole nother aspect of the people who kind of follow us a little bit.
Yep. Yeah, and this will be we're not going to limit it to just the U.S. If you're in a foreign country, you can, if you're overseas, you can certainly enter to win the watch. Obviously, if you do win, you'll be responsible for any import taxes into your country. So that's just a disclaimer, and we'll make sure we put that up on the official contest rules as well. But that's it. Anything else?
That was a lot of fun.
It was.
It's amazing how fast the time goes.
Yeah, when you're having a fun conversation with good people, it does go pretty quickly. So, and like I said, I'm looking forward to having a beer with those guys next week.
Well, you'll have to have one for me because I'll be here maintaining the peace between the species.
I can certainly do. I could have more than one for you if you'd like me to. So,
don't rub it in.
More than happy to help out with that. But all right, guys. Well, I think that's it for this episode. We hope you enjoyed it, and we will see you guys for episode 30. Yep. All right. Hang loose, everyone.
And stay tuned for the details on the giveaway.
Yep. All right.
Remember, buy what you love and love what you buy.
Later.